Can you guess what the operator of this machine is doing? He's using a cranberry harvesting machine called a beater and steadily working through this field at Creekside Cranberries in Langley, British Columbia.
Well, what you're seeing here is a flooded cranberry field that's being harvested. We pumped water in here last night to bring it up to the height of the beating. To beat the berries off, we use a self-propelled harvester. It's a fairly simple concept. The head turns like a paddle wheeler and thrashes through the water. We call it combing. It actually will comb through the vine and pop the berries off.
That's Brian's brother Colin running the beater. Cranberries are BC's second largest berry crop, with over 6,500 acres in production. And like most of the 80 cranberry producers in BC, this is a family farm.
We have about 70 acres here that we farm with our family. We started in 1998, and 3 years ago we added some more acreage to our operation.
Before the fall harvest begins, a cranberry field looks like this, with low-growing vines loaded with ripe berries. But did you notice? There's no water in the field.
These plants grow just like any other plant. They need a nice medium to grow in, they need drainage, they need irrigation.
It's a common misconception that cranberries grow in water, but for the harvest, water is essential. The bogs are enclosed by low dikes, and the first step in the harvest is to start up the pumps.
We use a lot of water. Some of it comes from the river, some of it comes from rainfall in ditches. But this time of the year, typically we need a lot of water for flooding and harvesting the berries. Typically when you flood a field for harvest, you would flood it to 6 to 8 inches deep. And then once all the berries are beat off the vine, you would raise the water to a height where it's clear of all vegetation, and then you bring in the booms and gather up the berries.
And the fact that cranberries float makes large-scale cranberry farming possible.
This section of the field was harvested a few hours ago. The beater ran through here, made its path, and knocked all the berries off. And they have floated to the surface like they do because of the hollow pocket in the center of the berry. It enables them to float to the surface and also allows us to harvest the fruit without having to deal with the plant underneath.
It is possible to harvest cranberries without flooding, but dry harvesting is slower and labor-intensive. It's used on a few BC cranberry farms to produce fresh local berries that are available in season in BC grocery stores.
When you have larger farms with larger production, there's no practical way of bringing the berries off the field without flooding. These berries all go for processing, so it's a very cost-effective way of bringing the cranberries into the receiving station.
And even though flooding and wet harvesting is more efficient, it still can take weeks to complete the harvest on a large cranberry farm.
The number of beaters that you see in a cranberry field often depends on the size of the operation. A 5-acre field with a single beater will take pretty much an entire day to do a good job harvesting, but the larger your fields, the more beaters you're going to have. There are 40-acre fields out there that they will run 8 to 10 beaters in a row just to harvest the fruit quicker.
And while it does take many hours to finish a field, the beaters are efficient and only require one pass.
It seems this year that when we beat the fields, the single pass is enough. It knocks almost all of the berries off. The few that are left behind, they're not going to come off, and it's not worth it for doing a second pass for the time involved. In some of the deeper areas, we mark our path with stakes so that you can see where your last pass was. Ideally, if you're not harvesting with deep water, you can very clearly see the tracks of the machine on your last pass, or you can tell just by the looking through the water, you can actually see the line where the berries have been knocked off.
And all this activity during the fall harvest attracts a lot of attention from the public.
It's a very interesting crop with beautiful colors and so different from anything else that we do in agriculture. It intrigues a lot of people.
When the beating of the vines is complete and the berries have floated to the surface, there's just one step to go in the harvest: collecting the cranberries and sending them for processing. This project is supported by the BC government's Buy Local program. delivered by the Investment Agriculture Foundation of BC with funding from the BC Ministry of Agriculture.